I never thought I would be the kind of daughter who stopped speaking to her parents. But sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you, are the same ones who slowly teach you how to leave. My name is Eleanor. And for 15 years, I was not treated like a daughter. I was treated like a backup plan. A financial safety net. A quiet sacrifice no one ever thanked. It started when I was just 23. My brother, Daniel, was 19 at the time. He was the bright future of the family. Or at least that's what my parents always said. He has talent, my mother would say proudly. He just needs support, my father would add. And I was told I was practical. That was their polite word for useful. At first, it didn't seem unfair. I had a stable job in a small accounting firm in Manchester. So when Daniel needed help with university fees, I paid a little. When he needed rent support, I helped again. When he changed courses twice and fell behind, I was told, Eleanor, don't let your brother fail. You're the responsible one. That sentence became my cage. Because being responsible meant I was always the one expected to fix everything. While Daniel was allowed to try, fail, restart. I was expected to fund every restart. I still remember one evening clearly. It was raining outside. I had just come home from work, tired, still in my coat. My mother was waiting at the kitchen table. She didn't even ask how my day was. She pushed a paper towards me. It was Daniel's tuition bill. I've already done what I can, she said softly. You're his sister. He listens to you more. I remember laughing once. Just a small, bitter laugh. He doesn't listen to me, I said. He listens to whoever pays for him. My mother didn't even react. She just said, then be the one who pays. That was the moment I should have understood everything. But I didn't. Because family guilt is a strange thing. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And those whispers slowly teach you to disappear. Daniel graduated, eventually. But instead of stability, he found more confusion. Another course. Another job he didn't like. Another fresh start. And every time, the same pattern repeated. A phone call. A request. A deadline. And me, paying. Sometimes I told myself it was temporary. Sometimes I told myself I was helping him stand on his feet, but the truth was simpler. He never had to stand. Because I was always holding him up. It wasn't just money. It was everything. Family dinners where my achievements were barely acknowledged. Birthdays where Daniel was celebrated like a promise, and I was thanked like an obligation. Even when I got promoted at work, my father said, "That's good, Eleanor. Now you can support your brother more easily." Not "we are proud of you." Not "well done." Just, more usefulness. And still, I stayed. Because I believed one day, things would balance. One day, they would see me. That day never came. Instead, something else happened. Something that finally broke the pattern. And changed everything. It started with a house. My parents had been renting the same small home for over 20 years. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet semi-detached house with a small garden and too many memories. One evening, my father called me. His voice was different. Tired. "We might lose the house," he said. My stomach tightened. Apparently, there were financial issues. Missed payments. Debt. And of course, Daniel was between jobs again. So they needed help. But this time, it wasn't university fees. It wasn't rent. It was something much bigger. They wanted me to help save the house. And not just help. They expected me to take responsibility for it. My mother said something I will never forget. "You're the stable one, Eleanor. If you don't step in, we'll all be out on the street." Then she paused. And added, "Daniel is already stressed enough. We can't burden him with this." That sentence. It didn't hurt like before. It just became clear. For the first time, I saw the pattern without emotion clouding it. I was not their daughter. I was their solution. And Daniel? He was their comfort. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the rain fall again. And I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. If I stop paying, what exactly remains of this family? And for the first time, I didn't have an answer that didn't hurt. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I didn't answer my mother's call. It rang once, twice, then stopped. A few minutes later, a message came through. Your father is very stressed. Please call us back immediately. No good morning. No how are you. Just urgency. Just expectation. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put the phone face down. And I went to work. But even at my desk, I couldn't focus. Numbers blurred together. Emails meant nothing. Because for the first time, I wasn't thinking about how to fix their problem. I was thinking about something else. Why was it always me? That evening, Daniel called. I almost didn't pick up. But something in me wanted to hear it directly from him. His voice was relaxed. Too relaxed. Hey Ellie, he said, like nothing was wrong. Mom said you're thinking about helping with the house situation. I stayed quiet. He laughed slightly. It's not even that serious. You worry too much, you always do. That sentence hit me harder than anything my parents had said. Not serious? Their house was at risk. Their stability was collapsing. And to him, it was nothing. I finally spoke. Daniel, do you understand what they're asking? There was a pause. Then he said something that stayed with me forever. Well, you're better with money. That's just how it is. Better with money. Not because I worked harder, not because I sacrificed more. But because I was assigned that role. Like it was never a choice. That night, I visited my parents. I didn't tell them I was coming. The house looked the same. Small garden. Old curtains. Familiar smell of tea and furniture polish. But inside, something felt different. Maybe it was me. My mother opened the door and immediately said, "Oh good, you're here." Not hello. Not welcome. Just expectation again. My father was sitting in the living room. He didn't even stand up. He just said, "We need a solution, Eleanor." I sat down slowly. And for the first time, I didn't ask what they needed. I asked something else. Where is Daniel in all of this? Silence. My mother answered quickly. He has his own pressures. I nodded. Slowly. And then I said something I had never said before. And what about mine? That question changed the room. Because no one had ever considered it, not once. My father frowned. You've always managed. That was it. That was their entire explanation of my life. You've always managed. Like I was a machine that didn't break. Like I didn't get tired. Like I didn't have limits. I looked at them both. And I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. That night, I went home and opened my bank records. 15 years. 15 years of transfers. Tuition. Rent. Loans. Emergency payments. Temporary help. Just this once. Last time. I calculated everything. When I reached the final number, I stopped breathing for a moment. It wasn't small. It was a future. My future. Gone. And then I noticed something else. A pattern. The money didn't just go to Daniel. Some of it covered their own expenses. Some of it filled gaps they never told me about. And some of it disappeared into vague family needs. I stared at the screen. And finally understood. I hadn't been helping one person. I had been carrying all of them. The next day, I didn't wait for another call. I went to the bank. And I stopped every automatic transfer I had set up for them. Every single one. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from guilt. From fear of what would happen next. Because deep down, I knew. The moment I stopped, everything would change. That evening, my phone exploded. Calls. Messages. Voicemails. My mother first. Then my father. Then Daniel. Each message louder than the last. Confusion turned into panic. Panic turned into anger. And finally, blame. But I didn't answer. Instead, I sat in my quiet flat. And for the first time in 15 years, there was silence. Real silence. And in that silence, I realized something important. Sometimes family doesn't fall apart when you walk away. It falls apart when you stop carrying it alone. By the third day, the silence I had created didn't last. It was replaced by pressure. Not physical pressure. Emotional pressure. The kind that arrives through a phone screen and refuses to leave you alone. My mother called 17 times in one morning. I counted. Each call felt less like concern and more like demand. Finally, I answered. Not because I was ready. But because I knew ignoring it would only make it worse. Her voice came through immediately. Sharp. Controlled. But shaking underneath. Eleanor, what have you done? I stayed quiet. She continued. Your father hasn't slept. Daniel is completely lost. And we've just received a letter from the bank. There it was. The consequence. Not of something I had done wrong. But of something I had stopped doing. Carrying them. I spoke calmly. I stopped the transfers. A pause. Then her tone changed instantly. You can't just decide that. We are your family. That word again. Family. Always used like an obligation. Never like a bond. I asked quietly, and when I needed support? Who decided then? Silence. For a brief moment, there was no answer. Then she said something I didn't expect. We did what was best for everyone. Not for you. Not for me. For everyone. Even though I was the only one paying. That evening, Daniel showed up at my flat. He didn't knock politely. He knocked like he owned urgency. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. Not because he had changed physically, but because I finally saw him clearly. No panic. No responsibility. Just frustration. You've gone too far, Ellie, he said immediately. I leaned against the doorframe. Gone too far how? He gestured vaguely. You stopped everything. Mum is crying, Dad is furious, and I'm stuck in the middle. I almost laughed. Stuck in the middle? He nodded. As if he had no part in any of it. As if I had been paying for a ghost. I asked him directly. Daniel, how much have you actually contributed in the last 10 years? He frowned. That's not on. You know I've had a hard time of it. There it was again. Difficulties. A word that had excused everything. I stepped back slightly and let him in. Not because I wanted peace. But because I needed truth. He sat on my sofa like nothing had changed, like I hadn't just cut off 15 years of support. Like I was simply being dramatic. I'm going to be honest with you, he said, leaning forward. You're being selfish. That word landed differently now. Selfish. After years of being called responsible, dependable, strong. Now I was selfish for stopping. I asked him quietly, what exactly do you think I owe you? He shrugged. Everything. You're my sister. I looked at him for a long moment. And I realized something painful. He truly believed that. Not because I taught him to. But because my parents had. That night, after he left, my father called. I finally answered. His voice was colder than my mother's. Eleanor. This has gone far enough. I waited. He continued. If you refuse to help your family in a crisis, then you need to reconsider your place in it. There it was. The threat. Not emotional anymore. Structural. Belong or be removed. I spoke carefully. I've been reconsidering my place for a long time, Dad. He didn't like that answer. You are abandoning us. I closed my eyes briefly. And for the first time I didn't feel guilt. I felt distance. Or, I said slowly, I'm finally stopping the abandonment that started years ago. Silence. Then he ended the call. After that night, something changed in me. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But permanently. I started going through old memories. Not the emotional ones. The factual ones. Every time I had been asked for help. Every time I had been excluded from decisions. Every time my success had been redirected into someone else's need. And I noticed a pattern I had never allowed myself to see before. It was never about fairness. It was about convenience. I was the easiest person to pressure, the least likely to refuse. 2 days later, I received a message from Daniel. This time, it wasn't confident. It was different. We need to talk properly. Mom is not well. Dad is talking about selling the house. Please don't ignore us. No manipulation this time. Just panic. Real panic. And underneath it, blame waiting to return. That was when I understood something important. They didn't miss me. They missed what I provided. And now that it was gone, they didn't know how to function without it. I sat by my window that night, watching the streetlights flicker through the rain. And I asked myself a question I had avoided my entire life. If I go back, does anything actually change? And for the first time, the answer was very clear. No. After I saw the loan documents, I didn't sleep properly. Not because I was afraid, but because everything I believed about my role in the family had started to collapse. For 15 years, I thought I was helping them survive. Now I was beginning to understand something different. I wasn't supporting them. I was covering for decisions I was never allowed to question. The next morning, I received a formal letter. Not from my parents. From the bank. My hands tightened as I opened it. It confirmed what I had already seen. The mortgage payments were in arrears. Significant arrears, and there was a notice of potential repossession if no action was taken soon. So it was real. Not exaggerated. Not emotional pressure. Real financial consequence. An hour later, Daniel called. This time his voice wasn't confident. It was irritated. Did you see what you've gone and done? He asked immediately. I stayed calm. What I've done? You stopped everything. Now the bank is threatening us. I closed my eyes briefly. Daniel, the bank is threatening because payments weren't made. He sighed loudly. You always make everything so technical. This is family, not paperwork. That sentence would have affected me once. Not anymore. I asked quietly, so what's your solution? There was a pause. Then he said, you fix it like you always do. And just like that, everything became clear again. Not just the situation, but the pattern. That evening, I went to see my parents again. I didn't announce it, I just walked in. My mother looked exhausted. My father looked older than I remembered. But Daniel, he looked annoyed. Like I was interrupting something. My mother immediately said, thank God you're here. But this time I didn't sit down right away. I stood in the middle of the room. And I said, "I've seen the documents." The room went still. My father's expression tightened. "What documents?" he asked. I replied calmly, "The loan. The arrears. Everything you didn't tell me about." My mother's face changed instantly. "It's not what you think." That sentence. It's never what you think. But it always is. I turned to Daniel. "Did you know about the loan?" He hesitated. "Just a fraction too long." "And that told me everything." My father answered instead. "It was necessary at the time." "For what?" I asked. Silence again. Because there was no simple answer, just years of decisions they didn't want to explain. My voice stayed steady. "So let me understand this correctly. You took loans against the house. You didn't tell me. And when payments became difficult, you expected me to continue covering everything without knowing the risk?" My mother's voice rose slightly. "You're twisting this." But I wasn't. For the first time, I wasn't emotional. I was just observing the truth. Then Daniel said something that changed the atmosphere completely. "It was never just you paying." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He looked away, and said quietly, "Mom and Dad used some of your money for other things too." The room went silent. Even my mother stopped speaking. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not shock. Clarity. Because deep down, I already suspected it. But hearing it confirmed, still changed something inside me. I asked softly, "How much?" No one answered. So I asked again.
How much of my money was actually used for the house? My father finally spoke. Everything was for the family. That wasn't an answer. It was avoidance. I nodded slowly. And for the first time, I said something different. "I'm done." My mother blinked. "What?" I repeated it clearly. "I'm done being responsible for something I was never fully included in." Daniel stepped forward. "You can't just leave us like this." I looked at him, and my voice stayed calm. "I already have." I turned toward the door. My father called out, "If you walk away now, don't expect this family to come back to you later." I paused for a moment, and then I said something I will never forget saying. "If you only come back when I'm useful, then you were never really here." And I left. That night, I sat alone in my flat. No calls. No messages answered. Just silence again.
But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt final. Because I understood something important. Sometimes walking away isn't punishment. It's the moment you stop participating in something that was never balanced to begin with. After I walked out of that house, I expected chaos. More calls. More pressure. More guilt trips. But for the first time, nothing came. Just silence. Proper silence. At first, it felt weird. Like I'd forgotten something important. But slowly, that feeling faded. And life started to shift. A week later, I got a message from Daniel. Just one line. "Things are getting mad here. Mom's not coping. Dad's barely speaking. Can you come round?" No apology. No responsibility. Just panic. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "I hope you sort it out." And I didn't send anything else, no explanation. No argument. Just that. 2 days later, my mom tried calling from a different number. I didn't pick up. But she left a voicemail. And honestly, she didn't sound angry this time. She sounded lost. Eleanor, things are falling apart. The bank is pushing us hard. We might lose the house. I know you're upset, but please, don't do this to us. That line stuck with me. Don't do this to us. As if I had created the situation by stopping my support, not by discovering the truth. Meanwhile, something strange started happening in my own life. Peace. Actual peace. I wasn't constantly checking my phone. No last-minute urgent requests. No emotional blackmail disguised as family duty. At work, I got promoted again. My manager even said, "You seem lighter lately." And I actually laughed. Because I was lighter. No financial chains. No emotional baggage dragging me down. Just me. 3 weeks passed. Then I heard the full story through a relative. Not directly from my parents. Of course not. Apparently, the situation had escalated properly. The bank had issued formal warnings. The house wasn't immediately gone, but it was hanging by a thread. And Daniel, well. Daniel had moved back in full time. No job. No plans. Just figuring things out again. Classic. My relative said something that made me pause. They keep saying you'll come back and fix it. I almost laughed. After everything. They still believed I was the backup plan. The emergency fix. The one who always sorts it. But I wasn't that person anymore. Not even close. One evening, I bumped into Daniel in town. Proper awkward moment. We stood there like strangers for a second. He looked tired. Not dramatic tired. Real life tired. He said, "So, you really just walked away then?" I nodded. Yeah. He sighed. Things are a bit of a mess. I replied calmly, "Sounds like things were already a mess. I just stopped covering it up." That hit him a bit. I could tell. But he still tried. "You could help us, you know. Even a bit." I shook my head. Nah. I'm done playing firefighter for a house I was never even allowed to own. He didn't say anything after that. Just looked down. For once, no argument. And my parents? They sent one final message. From my father. Short. Cold. "We are disappointed in your decision. We raised you better than this." That one used to break me. But not anymore. I actually just put my phone down and smiled a bit. Because for the first time I understood it properly. They weren't disappointed in my behavior. They were disappointed I stopped being useful. Big difference. Months passed. Life carried on. And weirdly, I started enjoying it. Small things hit differently. Coffee without stress. Weekends without emergency calls. Money staying in my account instead of disappearing every other week. I even started traveling a bit. Nothing fancy. Just simple stuff. But it felt like breathing properly for the first time in years. And the biggest lesson sometimes, it's the first time you actually find yourself. What Eleanor taught us. Don't sacrifice your entire life for one-sided family expectations. Healthy boundaries are necessary for self-respect. Helping others should never mean destroying yourself. And remember, silence and distance can be a form of healing, not cruelty. Comment down your opinion on this hard life story. Subscribe this channel and press the bell icon for more interesting videos.